Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another terrible tabletop tutorial in the Corona Quarantine Kitchen. My name is MD Welch, and we're going to be talking a little bit about photography today, obviously. But more specifically, we're going to focus on in this video, leveraging your metadata to get more out of your exporting of images. Let's be honest, exporting out images is not the most attractive thing in the world of photography. I would really be shocked if I get a lot of views of this video. But the honest to God truth is that exporting out your images is not only something that every photographer has to do, but it's going to take time out of your day. And depending on how you export out your images, this can make your life better or worse with your potential clients. There's nothing worse than delivering images to clients that they can't find, they can't access, they can't make any sense of. You've given them the wrong formats. Now, a lot of that exporting stuff is very basic features and people cover it in other videos, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Rather, I'm going to go into how to leverage metadata to get even more out of your export features. Now, I'm in Capture One, and the reason why I'm in Capture One here is because Capture One gives you a lot more options for your photography, especially when it comes to metadata. In fact, if I was going to point anybody towards Capture One, the overwhelming reason to use Capture One, in my opinion, over, say, like a program like Lightroom, like what's the radical difference, is really how efficient Capture One does at exporting images. That's not to say that Lightroom doesn't do a good job. You finally have in Lightroom the ability to export out multiple presets for the first time in the latest version, which is great. But Lightroom Classic doesn't still offer you as many features, and it certainly doesn't leverage the metadata as much as Capture One does. So I will go over a little bit of Lightroom workaround in this, but I'm going to be honest with you, it doesn't do this nearly as much. Now, what I've done rather hastily on my kitchen counter, again, terrible tabletop photography, is I've just grabbed a few things out of my refrigerator just so we have different subjects so we could really see this. So I've grabbed a few different beverages, I've grabbed a few different soups, I've grabbed a few different condiments here, and I photographed each one front and back. And again, no real lighting craft here whatsoever. This is not that video. But why I've done this is because I want to show you how you could leverage these different angles and use your metadata to give you better export features. And don't get too lost on the fact that I'm shooting products here. This applies to wedding photographers, event photographers, those people doing corporate photography, think headshots. Also event photographers, if you're capturing different types of events, races, bodybuilding competitions, anything like that, you could really use this technology to save yourself a lot of time, and even better, give your clients a much more detailed categorization of your exported images. And you'll see what I mean by that in a moment. So first thing to point out, I'm going to click on just one of these images here, and I'm going to go over to essentially the metadata panel, the letter I here in Capture One over on the left-hand side. And Capture One does allow you to customize and move a lot of stuff around. I haven't done that too much here for my own sanity as well as your viewing pleasure. And I have the keywords panel and the metadata panel, and I should be doing keywords. I'm just not doing them at the moment for this tutorial, but obviously you want to do your keywords. What I actually want to focus on here is the metadata panel, specifically the IPTC content section of the metadata panel. And I'm looking at headline, description, and category. Now, metadata is something that's always being expanded on. It's not necessarily true that one company will exactly read the exact same metadata across, because, for example, Capture One will allow you to do supplemental and create your own categories if you wanted to. So you might not get that read, say, if you were trying to do metadata, say, to InDesign. So always check your metadata tags. But headline, description, and category are relatively universal. And as you can see here, I've already gone through and I've already done a little bit of this metadata work. I've labeled each product using headline by the name of the actual item. The description is either front, or if I click on the back version, the back. And then I've also given it a category of beverages. Now, again, don't think of this as just tabletop photography. This could be, the headline could be the name of the wedding. The description could be the actual, whether it's bride or groom. A category could be, pre-ceremony, ceremony, the actual celebration at the end. You could go into first kiss, whatever that you want to do. You could leverage these three things however that you want. Again, I've gone through all of these, and I'm just going to come all the way down to the bottom just to walk you through this. I have Grey Poupon on. Yes. Do I have Grey Poupon on? Yes, I do. So headline is going to be the name of the product. And this is really up to you as far as the how you use this system. What you do want to do is be consistent across the board. You want to develop something so you get in the habit of it, especially as you're going to see in a moment, we're going to do presets here. So the description is front, and then the category, I've already created a category. And the nice thing about Capture One and Lightroom, by the way, in most programs will do autocomplete here. So I have condiments. I'm going to select the second image here. If I have one complaint about Capture One, it is the lack of a true auto sync button. So I got to use this arrow here. I'm going to hold down the shift key so it syncs both images up, and then I'll click on the last image here and I will save back. All right. I like Capture One, but I think some of their interface options are bad. All right. So the headline is going to be the name of the product. The description, is it a front angle, a back angle? And the category is going to be, is it a condiment? Is it a soup? Or is it a beverage? Now that we've done this, how can you actually leverage this metadata? Now, first of all, these files have automatically been renamed simply because I was tethered to the computer. So it went with the name of the actual session in Capture One. So I'm going to select all of these and I'm going to rename them. And this is ooh-ah moment number one. By when I select all of these, I'm going to come up to image and I'm going to come down to batch rename images here. First thing I want to point out is that Capture One, or first thing I want to point out about this window, there's a lot of things I'm pointing out first. The thing I want to point out about this window, or an important thing to keep in mind, is that Capture One does not call metadata tags. They call it tokens. Probably not the best name if you know your American history, but oh well, that's what they decide to use. So I'm using method text and tokens. They even have find and replace here. And right now what I have is I have headline, and then I have the date that the image was shot. I could actually load a different preset here if I wanted to. I could come into here and I have basic rename, and then I have product basic that I've already created. And I could come into here and you'll see that I have headline and then the actual counter. So if you were shooting, say, products and the date was irrelevant, or the name of somebody was irrelevant, you could create your own presets and you could have multiple renaming presets. You can do the same thing in Lightroom, by the way, and you could also leverage metadata very much in the same way as well. Now you might go, well, why would you do this? And I'm just going to do, I think I'm going to do my basic product basic here. And the reason why you would do this is because now, not only is the product rename rather than having a generic, nonsense serial number assigned to it from your camera, but it also would make it easier to find. So if all of a sudden you hand these off to a client and they're looking for, Grey Poupon over ginger ale, they could do a search on their operating system. They don't even have to get into metadata. They could just go right to file name here. And this is a great feature, especially if you're a commercial photographer, to hand this stuff off to particular clients. Now, as far as making your own presets for either renaming or exporting, it's relatively straightforward. You could come into these three little dots here. You could come into where it says presets. They already have some presets built here. But just like in Lightroom, Capture One wants you to reverse engineer this. So I'm just going to backspace a little bit. And if you come down where it says tokens here, you can actually look at all the tokens that you can pull from, right? So if you're a travel photographer, for example, you could actually load in different things like the altitude at which you shot something, or the city that you shot places in, or particular locations. And by the way, if you're a wildlife photographer, your description in your category could be birds, and it could be the type of bird, or get into all the biology of things, which I didn't pay attention to in school. So you have those options as well. But here I'm just going to kind of repeat what I already did. If I start to type in the name of in their case token, but a meta tag, it will automatically autocomplete, and I could go ahead and click on that, and then either right arrow or tab. And then I could come in and then I could go to, the image date or image time, and I could go through here and click on any of these and load them up. And you could get very, very descriptive, maybe even too descriptive with your renaming. So you have to be careful about that because you can maybe make a file name that's absolutely too long here. And I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go back and select my my product basic here. And I'm just going to go with the headline and 5-digit counter. I'll go ahead and click OK. And then the only other thing that I'm going to do here is I'm just going to reset the rename counter so it resets at 0. You have to do that, unfortunately, in Capture One. Lightroom doesn't do that. It defaults out, which is really nice. So it displays the image that I currently have selected here. So it does that. I'll go ahead and click rename. And all of a sudden now, all of my images have been renamed. Now, for the next trick up my sleeve, what I'm going to do here is I am going to create an export preset. And this again is probably where Capture One really, really shines. Again, Lightroom is caught up, or Lightroom Classic that is, has caught up a little bit, but still doesn't do this nearly as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and create a brand new recipe here. And that's what they call them. They don't call them presets, they call them recipes. And I'm going to call this, product just to start off with, right? And it's not a bad idea to do something very basic here. Now, there's a few potential gotchas when it comes to exporting out of Capture One. Again, not the best interface in the world, maybe too many options, but it is very powerful once you get used to it. So we have a couple other panels here. We have the recipes themselves, the list of them, or the presets, the actual details and process recipe here. That's where you could actually plug in your own information. Then you have what is a little confusing. You have output location, and then you have output naming, and then you have process summary. I'm going to come to output location and output naming in a moment. I'm going to first start with process recipe here. I'm going to click on basic, and this is where all your file format information is. And I'm just going to go to, say, JPEG, and I'm going to use JPEG, and I'm just going to knock down the quality to, say, 80 here. So it's not super huge on my export. We could do the profiles here. We could change resolution. You have scale. You have all the options here. And then you could even choose to open it up with a particular program. If you've exported out of any program here, this is not anything wild or crazy. Where most of the work, though, is going to be done is the actual file section here. At the very top, it says output location. If your root folder is output location, it will use whatever the output location panel is currently set to, which it is currently set to output. And if you're brand new to Capture One, understand that Capture One will actually always create folders for every new job that you create here. So if I open this up and then come one step down here, you'll see that I have a capture folder where all the images that were captured are stored, output, which is where all the images would be outputted. There's a selects folder as well, and also a trash folder. So these folders are created automatically. And by the way, you can even rename those. That's a longer discussion. So your output location will just default to putting these images in the output location. But you could actually make the output location for the entire application essentially be another folder. So if every time you export it out, you wanted to go to, say, Dropbox, you could come down to choose folder and choose your entire Dropbox folder. And the output location goes from being your output on your local hard drive to Dropbox or whatever file sharing service that you're particularly using, which is a nice feature. Now, if you wanted to do that, you could, and this is where the confusion begins, you could also do the exact same thing at root folder. What I advise most people when they're first starting off with Capture One is keep it as simple as possible and leave output location set to output and do all of your work in the process recipe panel. That's just the easiest way to do it. And for the moment, I'm just going to leave it in output location as well. So it's going to go to my output folder. The sub name is any sort of sub name that you want to add after the fact, right? So whatever you put into this field, if you come down to output naming here, you'll see that the format is the image name. So that's the current image as it sits. And then a sub name, which we haven't done anything here. And it does give you a sample based upon whatever image that you have selected here. So if I wanted to do, say, description, right? And I put that in there, what would happen if I hit the tab or enter key now, you'll see that it gives me the file name and then it gives me an underscore and then it would say, back, right? Because this is the image that's the back side of it. This is the current selected image that we see inside the window. So you get this kind of live preview here. So that is a very nice feature that you have available to you. Now, you could also go further with this and you can create a lot of different options. You could do color, black and white. You could do recipe names, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. But let's do the subfolder because this is probably the easiest one to do. I'm going to, for subfolder here, I am going to say category, right? And the category was the actual, if I come back to my little metadata here, remember category is it a condiment? Is it a soup? What is it, right? So it's going to automatically divide all of these images into their own particular category. I'll do a backslash here so it puts it in another folder. And then in category, I could also do description, right? Which would be front or back, right? So I could have that, have that break up here. So I have this already set up. Now adjustments is referring to crop and sharpening. Not going to get into that. Metadata is just whether you include what other particular types of metadata. And then you could also choose to do watermarking here as well. Again, most of this is straightforward if you've exported out. And if not, it's still a longer conversation that I really want to get this long video into here. So I'm going to go back to File. I have this already set up. I have all of these selected, and I'm going to go ahead and just hit Process. And I'll go ahead and get a status here as it comes across. And it says it's going to be about 3 or so minutes. So I'm just going to take a quick pause and we'll pick this up in the power of edit. Okay, through the power of editing and magic, we're back. We've completed our export here. I'm going to hit this little arrow just to the right of output location. In process recipe, this will actually take me to my folder, and I will see, lo and behold, there are 3 subfolders. We have beverages, we have condiments, and we have soup, right? And we have our different things broken up. Now, I decided, just as a demonstration, to break up subfolders for back and front, and we could see the different items in here. So this could be different angles. So let's say, for example, you're doing product photography and you've shot a product with a white background, and then you shot an image that had a transparent background. You could have your subfolders be that way as well. So again, really, this starts to get into what your imagination and your client needs are. Because I think a lot of people, at least I know I was this way when I first saw Capture One do this, I'd never thought about the potential of being able to change this. And while you can rename files in, say, Lightroom Classic, you can't do anything as far as metadata and leveraging it when it comes to actual locations here. So I'm going to select all of these, and I am going to do a quick delete. Throw those in the garbage, and let's just kind of continue on here. Now, what I'm going to do is, at the moment, this product thing is a full-size image. I mean, 80% on the quality of the JPEG. It's not great, but it's not bad here. But what if they also wanted to have a web product and they wanted to have print product? So I could come in here and say product_print for a full-size image here. And then what I'm going to do, and the reason why I'm doing this before I create a second recipe for web here is because you can duplicate these recipes. And since there's just going to be a small change, why reinvent the wheel? So for example, with the sub name here, I can say something, and by the way, this happens a lot, and I don't know if you've run into this, where you deliver the exact same image with 4 different sizes. Well, now you have 4 images with the exact same name. They can't go in the same folder because they would overwrite each other, but now they're the exact same image, and it's very hard to distinguish one from the other. I could come into subname and actually type in recipe name. So whatever the name of the recipe is, that's going to be the file that goes underneath it. And I'll just go ahead and hit tab here, and we could see that it now says Grey Poupon underscore the file name here, and then it says product print. And if you wanted to have an underscore in between that, you could either add that between the image name and the subname here for output naming, or you could actually specify that in the actual process recipe. So I'll put an underscore in front. I'll hit the tab key here so that way it recognizes, and now we see that file automatically update. So now I could use this recipe as a template for my next recipe for a web-based version. So I'm going to come into product print. I'm going to click on it once, click on the 3 dots here, and duplicate this recipe. And I'm doing this in the process recipes panel. Now, when I do this, it will give me product print copy. I'm just going to automatically rename this, and I'm going to call it web or digital, whatever you want to, however you want to refer to it. Maybe social media, maybe specific social media sizes. For basic here, I'm going to come in, I'm going to set the long edge to nothing greater than, say, 1500 pixels. That's fine. I'm going to do, instead of Adobe RGB, I will do, let's do sRGB profile here, or you could do P3 if you wanted to. And I think that's pretty good. And I'll just drop my quality down to maybe 65, right, for digital. That might be too much, but we'll see. So now if I come to file, right, everything's pretty much the same. The recipe name is going to be different because we've just changed the recipe name, but the actual token or tag doesn't have to be changed. And the category here doesn't have to be changed either, and the subfolder as well. Now, if you wanted to distinguish between the digital files and the print files, you could come into subfolder and type in recipe name as well, right? And then do a backslash in between the 2 tags. or forward slash, sorry. And then you could have that for your recipe name. So now it's going to put it in a print_web or print folder first, and then break up the categories. And I think what I'll actually do is I'm going to get rid of the description. I don't think I really need the description for this at the moment. And then I'll just add that for print. I'll get rid of description, and then I will just add in front of it recipe name. And then again, make sure you add that slash in between there. And really quick, before I move on, one small little glitch here. It is showing only 2 of the recipes here. If you run into that problem, there's this show enabled only. The enable means if they're checked or not. So both of these are checked. So I have all of my images selected here. I'll go ahead and hit process. And again, we'll pick it up and edit. And we're back. Again, through the power of editing, we've saved ourselves a little bit of time. I'm going to go ahead and hit the arrow here, hop over into our output window. We have a product print. We have a product web. We have our beverages. And then we could see all of our beverages here as well. So, and again, I haven't even begun to leverage the front or the back, but you could kind of see where this is going and start to think about your own particular recipes, how you would create those recipes or presets in your head, in your mind. The last one I want to leave you with is one that I use quite a bit because I deliver a lot of color and black and white photography to clients. So I've already kind of cooked up this recipe, so we'll reverse engineer it. 2 quick pictures of some of my dogs. This is my dog Inara in a color version, a black and white version, and then River and Inara both looking very sad for whatever reason. I assure you they're much happier than that. I will come into here. I do need to double check one thing on this shot. I forgot to convert this one over to black and white. All right. Now, really quick, before we look at the recipe, just a little bit on the metadata itself. The headline is Huskies, and the description is, and by the way, I always put this description in. I put my name and my website just because if I leave it blank, there's an opportunity missed. But I've actually seen this appear on websites when clients have used them or actually have had people reach out to me this way. So that's an optional thing to do. But notice that the color image, it has color for category, and the black and white image has the black and white as a category. Same is true for this color, and same is true for this black and white. So the color is color and the black and white is black and white. And that's nothing fancy. I just made the color images. I said the category for color. Once I got all the editing done, I selected all of the color images, and then I did something called a clone variant here, which duplicates all of them. It's very much like a virtual copy inside of Lightroom. And then I selected all of the copies together and I converted them to black and white, and also at the same time changed the category from color to black and white. So now what I can do is select all of these images. I'm going to come over into my recipe panel here. I'll uncheck my product and I'll scroll up here. And I have my 2 main recipes that I use. One is called full size and one is called web size. Now I'm going to check both of them because if I don't, I'll forget them. But full size, if we go into this, full size is just basically JPEG at 90. Full size here, sRGB though, because a lot of clients, that's all they still want is sRGB. Web size is pretty much the exact same thing, except long edge is 1500. Now, both of these use the following information. Now, I'm going to change it from Dropbox for both of these because they don't need to be on Dropbox. I'll go to output location for both of them. I'll have to remember to change that back for my next job, but that'll work out. So they're going to go to output location, and full size and web size have the exact same information. Category, which if we go back to category, is it color or is it black and white? So it's going to put it in a subname. It's going to do the category here. And then it's going to do the actual recipe name, which is full size or web size. So if we come down into output naming, we'll see that it takes the Husky name, which then had a date, time, and serial attached to it, or file number. And then underscore, is it color or is it black and white? And is it full size or not? And then same is true for web size. And then as far as subfolder goes, it's going to do the headline, which the headline is the name of the file, in this case, Huskies. And that's going to do the category, which is going to be whether it's color or black and white. And then it will do whether it's full size or web size. So with both of these selected, I'll go ahead and hit process. Now, while this is happening, the nice thing about this is I don't have to do, really what I'm doing is I'm creating 4 versions of the exact same photo. 2 that are full size, 2 that are web size, right? Of those full size, 1 is black and white, 1 is color. Of the web size, 1 is black and white, 1 is color. And rather than having to export out 4 times, and even if I was in Lightroom here, I would still have to create different recipes and create these different locations and kind of really work that window here where I can actually lean on process recipes much more inside of Capture One. And I thought I would be done by now, so I'll stop rambling and we'll pick this up and edit. Okay, editing is done, or the exporting is done, and now we've picked it back up in edit. I'm just going to go ahead to the location here. Here's a folder that says Huskies in the output folder. I have 2 subfolders, black and white and color, and inside of each one of these is full size and web size, and then in each one of these are the actual 2 images at their different sizes, right? One click of the mouse, a little bit of metadata work, a lot of time saved, and the best is that I can hand these off to a client. I don't have to worry about the client accidentally putting the same image in the same folder and overriding the full size with the web size and then calling me up 3 months later like, this won't print up, I did just noticed it. All of these problems are eliminated. The clients have a clearer understanding of what you're handing off to them, and it's also far more descriptive in the long run, and it also is going to save you a lot of time. Now, really quick, I did say that I would show you how to do this in Lightroom. If you come into Lightroom and you go to export, now I'm using Lightroom Classic and I'm using the latest version of Lightroom Classic, and we now finally have user presets here where you could actually do your particular settings and sizes. Now, as far as file rename goes, you can do your own custom renaming. So you could do the same file name and then you could come underneath the metadata here and you could use their list of metadata. And it's pretty much exactly what Capture One would offer you as well. So you could add on to the file name if you wanted to. Now for location, that's going to be a little bit more difficult because you're going to have to create a preset for each location as well as the actual renaming as well. So you would have 4 presets, not 2 presets to deal with this. But then you could put them in subfolders here and you would actually name them that way. But every time that maybe you want to make a change to it, you have to actually change your preset rather than leveraging the metadata, which may or may not be a big deal. But you do have something very similar to this inside of Lightroom. I do feel that Capture One's a little bit better at it. And if you have it, it's a great feature to continue to explore. It's also a feature to maybe to draw you into Capture One. By the way, I'm not paid by Capture One. I should have started off with that. Nor am I paid by Adobe. So I go back and forth between both applications. But I find that for my commercial work, Capture One's just so much easier to use for the exporting thing here. But again, you could do the same thing in Lightroom. Hopefully this was helpful. Sorry for the length and the time, but it's just a lot of stuff that you got to cover. I hope you're finding these quarantine kitchen tutorials of terrible tabletop photography to be very helpful. And I wish you all the best. And yeah, comment. What do you want to see next? And what information is pertinent to you as you're spending this time in quarantine and trying to brush up on your photo skills. I wish you all the best. Take care.